Hello, and welcome back for another Bones V Kickstarter review video. Today we're covering the last expansion that I picked up, the fan favorite set. After this video, be sure to check out the other videos on the core set, as well as the other expansions, Dungeon Dwellers, Daimyo, Dark Depths, Greek Odyssey, and Brinewind. Remember, if you'd like to get any of these expansions, the core set, or some of those add-ons, nearly all of which we'll be covering in future videos, you need to head to the 5.5 Pledge Manager and compile your order soon. So, scan the QR code or head to reapermini.com or pm.reapermini.com for more info. The Fan Favorites expansion. This is the final expansion that I picked up. It was a $50 set that was added in the final hours of the campaign, composed of miniatures that Reaper and its fans have talked about including in a Kickstarter or getting new sculpts for, or had suggested during the course of this campaign. Reaper admits that some of these sculpts are a little outrageous, a little out there, but I'll let you be the judge of that. This set had one of the best values per mini at about $1.14 each, and includes multiple large or huge size minis. Since this set was added in the final moments of the Kickstarter, it's possible not everyone saw this expansion during the campaign and only realized it existed right as it was ending, or perhaps during the Pledge Manager stage. Either way, I'd be curious as to how many people actually picked this one up, as there's a lot of really cool, really interesting figures in this. But enough talking, let's actually get to looking at these minis. The animatronic troll and kobolds were a part of the comic that ran alongside the Escape from Pizza Dungeon Kickstarter, which you can check out on the Kickstarter page. I find it a bit odd that these were put in the fan favorite set and not the core set, given that context, but at the same time the core set was much more of a general purpose set of minis, and these are very much not. They're very particular niche kind of minis, which, by the way, can actually already be purchased from the Reaper web store right now at quite the markup. These kobolds are very cute, very cartoony. While situations that these would be used in, typical D&D situations and encounters, might be limited, I think they make for very memorable encounters when they're brought up. Same goes for the troll, which is modeled after a new Reaper style troll. I could see a creative gnome tinkerer having some fun and making this one. Or maybe this is a Mechagodzilla situation where you're fighting what you think is a regular troll, only for it to be revealed that it is, in fact, Mecha Troll. All very interesting possibilities, but here's what I really want to discuss.
What you doing out here with all this ass? Double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon, hella ass, the sun is still out.
Anyways, I think this is a fine little troop, perfect for practicing metal painting techniques, maybe some rust technique, or just having some fun practicing more cartoony styles of painting. Here we have a squad of Mephits, weird imp-like elementals. If you're struggling to make them out on the video, don't worry, you're not losing your eyesight. I struggle to make them in my own hand with my own two eyes. Reaper cast these in clear, which, fair enough. Some are made of ice, water, or some other material that could benefit from maybe a clear painting, at least in terms of giving people options. The problem for me is that I can't tell these apart all that well. I challenge you to tell me which is which from a distance, because remember, these are all going to be looked at from the edge of a table as they're playing D&D, Pathfinder, etc. Not this close up. I guess I'm just not a big fan of clear minis, maybe not as much as other people. Sure, we can just prime these up, remove the whole issue from the equation, but this is a review of the product as it comes, and you know, this is as it comes. The sculpts are really good. It's just, for me, clear minis can be a little more trouble than they're worth. Next, we have some blood imps. These guys have a feature that, well, I'm just gonna say that I didn't need to see that. Anyways, they're all pretty wacky looking and probably meld well into any demonic or devilish horde. Though they might not be great fits as actual imps by 5e standards. Imps are small/tiny creatures, and these look medium-sized, on par with dwarves to me. The wing textures on these is great, especially on the screeching one, but the one with the staff may be my favorite because of the goofy, crazy-looking head at its tip. I think these will fit in just fine alongside the Demonic Legion add-on, which we'll be looking at in a future video. And while there are a few things about these figures that maybe I wish wasn't so prominently displayed, I still think there's pretty alright sculpts. This is what Reaper refers to as a mini encounter, specifically titled Don't Steal Cockatrice Eggs. Encounters are how Reaper divided up their non-expansion sets in the add-on section. And I guess they thought this one was a bit too small to sell on its own. Perhaps they were right, as these are all small-sized figures. We have this halfling thief, great character on this one, but unfortunately only useful for this specific purpose. I love that he's holding his hat down as he's taken off, probably shouldn't be looking over his shoulder, though, given the context. We get a little rocky cockatrice nest that also seems to be a small loot pile. Looks like there's gold, stray cockatrice feathers, skulls, a potion, and possibly an immovable rod. Oh, and looks like a baby cockatrice is beginning to hatch. And here we have our 4 cockatrices. Cockatrice. Whatever. There's 4 of them. Both real life and D&D lore isn't always very sure how big these are or what exactly they look like, but I would say that these are some of the better all-around more representative figures out there on the market. They're small, but that just means that they can swarm you. They have that scaly dragon-like texture, but still retain the chicken aspect. And I really like their tails that kind of remind me of like a peacock, a male peacock's feathers and plumage kind of rolled up. Even though these are probably much less just for display and seem to have a little stinger at the end. All around a good little set. I think the cockatrice part is much more useful than the little thief, but they can all, you know, be useful in their own mind. Ooh, a bonus mini. Yes, so here we have a pair of Rakshasas, one of which, the male one, was thrown in as a bonus after the campaign had concluded to match the female Rakshasa that was already in the box. Rakshasas are not exactly a common figure to find, despite the fact they feature prominently in a variety of campaign modules for 5e and have had popular appearances in the TTRPG community. So it's good to get a very versatile pair here. You could also use these simply as catfolk or were-tigers, but the defining feature of these fiends based on the Indian mythology that they come from is that their hands are reversed, meaning that the right hand is on the left arm and vice versa. So you'll have to really ignore that detail if you want to use these figures, not as intended, but it can certainly be done. After those two, we have the Spikeshell Anti-Paladin. Spikeshells are Reaper's take on turtles. This one in particular is quite large. Here I have placed it next to a WizKids turtle. Like the centaur from the Greek Odyssey expansion, this figure doesn't quite fit within the 1x1 square grid either, so some finagling may be required during gameplay if you want to use this as a PC or even as a foe to fight. All that said, he's a very cool looking character. Evil turtle minis are not all too common, or turtle minis in general, so for that matter, it's a good mini to pick up, either with this set or on its own when it inevitably comes to retail. Yeah, I definitely say this is a favorite of at least this fan. We got some S tier minis right here. Axolotl Adventurers. Sure, Axolotl people are not exactly a common sight in most TTRPG settings, but when you need them, here you have the trio to draw from. I love this armored spellcaster with their bone sickle staff and their big old eyes. Definitely a good canvas for some cute painting schemes. The swordsman is well posed and well armored. I like the little smirk on its face. The shield that it has features a symbol that I think loosely looks like an axolotl. It's a nice touch. Also, you can see just how prominent the tails are, how big it is. Really important for nailing the look that these are axolotls and not just weird aliens. This, I suppose, would be a rogue. He has a grappling hook, which reminds me of one of the figures from the Dungeon Dweller set. Since these creatures would reasonably be adept swimmers, I can see this figure getting great use as a threat hiding under the water, using that thing to drag people in and then taking them out on its own terms. Yeah, these three would be an excellent addition to my collection, and look forward to figuring out a way to use them, because definitely gotta work them into the game. Non-human characters seems to be more of the theme of this set, and as such, we have a bunch more non-human adventuring folk. First up, Buglips. This is a mini based on a Reaper Forums user who goes by the same name, depicted as a goblin carrying a large sack of goodies, presumably lots of Reaper models. It's a very interesting looking figure, and this is a very fun way to pay tribute to a fan. The mini seems like it would be best used as a hireling, specifically a porter, but I suppose this could also make for a very funny thief concept. You just can't put anything down. My only nitpick about the mini is that from a distance, it's hard to actually make out where his arms are. I imagine once this is painted, that won't be a big issue though. Next up we have Ranger Raccoon. I don't know the story behind this mini. I suppose this is a play on a specific fan of Reaper minis of some notoriety, or it's just a fan suggestion, or someone decided to just make a fun sculpt. Might be a little unfortunate. This guy is very much a non-combatant looking mini, but it's fine. Here we have the first of three wild folk, aka Furbolgs. That's right, we're getting some good Furbolg minis in this set. Species have gained notoriety thanks to things like Campaign 2 of Critical Role featuring them, and them finally getting some prominence in a couple of supplemental books released by Wizards of the Coast. This grizzled ranger really sells the defender of nature vibe that Furbolgs are said to possess. I really like the bracers they're wearing. They have a face on them. I don't know of who or what, but it's a fun detail. The stance also reads to me as back off or I will mess you up. So yeah, this guy means business. Definitely don't go messing with the woods while he's on watch. And the last of these figures really seems like the partner to the other kindly Furbolg. Their expressions are both very warm and inviting. I would argue that either of these would make great helpful NPCs, spellcasting druidic PCs, or keystone figures that your party returns to for advice, or when they just need a place of rest. My only nitpick about this mini is that they put a sheathed dagger on their back. That just doesn't seem like a safe or convenient placement to me. Our list of characters keeps on growing. This here is the Hellborn Paladin, or Anti-Paladin. This tiefling stand-in would also function as a fighter or other sort of character, but they're going to require a high strength stat regardless, because look at the level of that sword. That is an ice level blade. It is huge. Great curl on the horns, and I appreciate that this is one of the hooved tieflings. This wraith or lich or whatever is named Ungorth, and maybe one of my favorite random minis in the entire Kickstarter. I just really dig the slender, menacing silhouette, like he's rising up from the earth. The giant claw hand, the empty hood, and the wild bone-laden staff. Just a cool looking mini. And, you know, it's the one that I could see really being used either in random encounters or as a big bad. This figure is referred to as the Balding Rogue, after another Reaperite. He's actually a recast of an older Reaper model. He seems to be in the process of throwing a dagger, which you might think puts him at a disadvantage, but it actually looks like he's got a backup in his boot. And he does still have that gnarly looking sword if you get too close, so I guess he'll be just fine. Yeah, this is a good player character mini, for sure. This is Melusine Dark Ember. I don't know who that is, but she looks to be some kind of spellcaster, maybe a necromancer or an evil wizard or something. Another cool staff on this mini, but otherwise just a kind of fine looking figure. I believe this might be a recast, since I find this little signature on there, and I only really find that on older Bones models, but I can't for the life of me find this on the web store. Maybe it was a special release, maybe they just took it off. Maybe I'm crazy. Who knows? Probably, definitely the last. And finally we have a Vampiress, in the process of transforming into a swarm of bats, or summoning a swarm of bats, or just hanging out with a swarm of bats, because bats are cool. I don't know. This figure would pair well with that Vampire Lord from the core set, and if you're running Curse of Strahd, perhaps this could make for a great vampire mini-boss to encounter over the course of that adventure. Yeah, it's another cool little group of characters, but we have at least a few more to touch on. Well, at least one more, that's for sure. This last character is an interesting case. It is one mini with two alternate versions. This is the female
Landsknecht. Landsknecht,
which is a type of German-speaking mercenary. In this context, I guess she'd just be a hired sword with a very specific style. Unless you are setting your game in Germany during the time these guys would be around. Anyway, she comes with two different head options, one wearing a helmet and one without. Thankfully, the peg is secure enough in the slot just through the friction, at least in my case, that I don't feel that I need to glue this head in and make a final decision on which I'd like to have more permanently. That said, if I had to choose, I think I would go with the no helmet look, as that makes the character much more identifiable and less like just any old anybody in armor. It's cool that we get these options, but if I did have to choose, I think this would give me a sense of anxiety, much like that paladin from the core set does. But like in that situation, I appreciate the option, and I can always find a use if I did have to pick one for the missing part. Hope you're ready for this one. We have here a chicken swarm. Yep, that's right, a chicken swarm. I don't know the origins of all these fan favorites, but I have to guess this is what happens when you kick too many chickens and too many fables. This would truly be a reckoning, or perhaps a Peckening? Yeah, I definitely think this fits more in your goofier adventures. Unlike this one, it's not quite a swarm, but pretty close. This mini is called Whispering Ghoulsbane. It appears to be some kind of swirling mass of skulls, bone, and branches. I guess this is a summon that you get from the ultimate fusion of Necromancer and Druid, the world's most metal rosebush, I guess you could call this. Yeah, that seals it. This is one of the favorite minis of this set, and I'll probably end up using it on some players at some point. Woe to you, my future players, because I don't think you'll be wanting a kiss from this rose. As the minis keep getting bigger, we have 4 Gatermen. This isn't the first Gator or Crocodile Folk Reaper made. Here's one I painted up, for example. But I would argue that these 4 have the best level of quality out of any of Reaper's Gator Folk models so far. Stepping up first, we have one with a spiked club. He's a bit bigger than the other ones, and I guess he'd have to be to swing that thing. But, you know, as you can see, he has a little collection of shells and things strapped to him. The club itself seems to be spiked with some of these shells even, which I feel like, unless they're particularly strong, would just shatter after a few hits. But, you know, this guy likes shells. What are you gonna do? Argue against it? He's a gator guy. He'll eat you. The shielded one reads more of a leader type to me. I think my favorite detail about him is the scar he's got going across his eye. He's using an old busted up breastplate, no doubt taken from some unfortunate adventurer, as a small shield. He's also got a turtle shell pauldron and a stone club or axe. Definitely a figure with a story behind it, this one. This one's carrying a rather wild looking stone axe. I feel like this thing would probably break after a lot of use, but you know, what do I know? I'm not a stone axe expert. Curiously, this one has some broken manacles or bracers. I wonder if that means someone once had this guy chained up and is since broken free. This last one might be my favorite though. He's got a stone spear, which he looks like he's aiming for a throw. You can see this guy being a great range component of an otherwise melee focused squad. As with all these, the scales are fairly simple but very effective. Get the look across. I think Reaper did a great job on these. Now that we're getting into the larger minis, we have the Air Scion, aka the Djinn, aka the Genie. As you can see, he is actually appearing out of a lamp, though I don't think this one is going to be very happy to perform any musical numbers or anything like that. The level of detail in this figure is incredible. He looks really great alongside the other Scions from the Elemental Scions add-on. Look forward to seeing that video pretty soon. I think this figure looks much better than the ones of the same sort of type or theme that I've seen from WizKids or other mass-produced models. This one actually has some character and a good dynamic pose. Yep, this is definitely one of the highlights of the set for me. And I wish the rest of the minis of this type were as equally as detailed as this one. And now for the penultimate figure of the set, the massive Mamlord, or the Mammutaur, so I would call it. Yes, this figure seems to be a centaur mammoth? I don't know who came up with this idea, but they're a genius. The original work in progress sculpt of this was bald, and they've gone in a different direction, it seems. I think that was a good call. The upper half looks a lot better in my opinion, and a lot more finalized and put together. Unlike a traditional centaur, I'd say this one's upper body resembles more like that of an orc than a human. It's got 2 sets of tusks, one small, one mammoth size, and is wielding a massive spiked great club. Yeah, I think intimidating is the word of the day for this guy. I mean, he's got this scowling belt and a sword with a skull as the pommel. Yeah, this is perhaps not a friendly figure. This is a slightly warped figure, though, as the pegs don't quite line up with the holes on the base for me. I have just kind of let it rest there. That issue aside, this would still be a great figure to go out on, but there is just one more figure to cover, and he's been in the background this entire time. Cower in fear, mortals. It's the demonic Lasher, aka the Demogorgon. Yeah, this mini represents one of D&D's most powerful and dangerous foes. One that does not have a lot of high quality, readily available figures, might I add. Now, my demonic Lasher mini is fairly badly warped on one of its legs, so it doesn't line up on its base, which the base is actually really cool. It seems to depict some kind of hellish mire with like bubbling lava or mud or blood or something. The plastic on the leg is pretty thick and stiff, so the hot water ice bath treatment may not be enough to fix this, which is unfortunate. The figure is otherwise in great condition and is certainly deserving of its position on the front of the box. Now, if this figure is being used the way it is meant to, this would only ever come up in very high level encounters and perhaps only ever once in a series of campaigns. But hey, when it does, you'll have an excellent mini to use. Just, make sure you get around to painting it before you actually throw it on the table. And with that, we're done. At least with the fan favorites expansion and with all of the expansions that I acquired from the Bones V Kickstarter. From here on out, all the videos will be looking at the various add-ons that you could acquire and still can acquire, at least in part. In the meantime, though, thank you for watching. If you had a favorite mini from this expansion, or just a favorite expansion in general, let me know in the comments down below. I think my favorite mini from this set might be that Lich, but as far as this expansion compares to the others, well, I gave this a score of 10 out of 12 after, tallying up all of my other scores. It's about on par with a lot of the other expansions, I would say. A lot of niche figures, but still pretty much everything is of great quality. Now, if you'd like to get this set or any of the others, you still got a little bit of time, as of recording anyway. Head over to the 5.5 Pledge Manager using that QR code or the links in the description. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, consider giving the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to help it grow and see more of my videos. Alrighty, have a good one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in those next videos. Let's go paint some minis.